Welcome to the second session of Skilling Time with Digibank. The idea is to put the time we have in our times to good use, to take care of ourselves and the ones we love. That also includes your mental health and your family's mental health. And that's why I'm here today. But first, let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm a parent coach and counselor. You can find my organization under the name of Trio. Hi Vinod, nice to see you here. TRIOC is part of an international organization of parenting professionals called Hand in Hand Parenting. At Hand in Hand, we use personal experiences along with in front of a backdrop of science to be able to give you tips and tricks so that you can support your families better. It is honestly my own parenting journey and my own personal struggles that brought me into this space of supporting parents and families. So trust me when I tell you that we all need all the help we can get. It is important, it is essential, and it is not really a choice. Hi, Satish. Satish, nice to see you. So I have been invited by Digibank for this session so that you can live more with your family even in these times. Please tag people or start a watch party so that others can join too. I'm going to give us a couple of more minutes before we get started, and everybody who had planned to tune in is able to join us and see what we have going on today. So a little bit about my own journey and my own qualifications. I am a mother to two girls. They're 10 and 12 years old. And I really stumbled upon this journey when I was struggling with my own parenting challenges with my younger daughter. Ever since this lockdown has started, we have been constantly feeling the pressure of being in this corona cave for sure. The advantage I have is my network of international professionals. So to be very honest, I had been hearing about the stories of being in these independent spaces with social distancing from China and Italy long before it came to our Indian shores. So the strategies I'm going to share with you come from a collective of all of these people who have been living in this situation and things that seem to be working for some families at least. I hope these do help you and work for you and make that difficult task of parenting in these times a little bit easier. Great. Hi Mohit, Vinod, Bhavesh, Naresh. Thank you all for tuning in. It is so great to see so many fathers joining in to this conversation on parenting, something that wasn't very common a few years ago, but increasingly I am seeing more and more fathers equally involved and engaged into these parenting roles. So let's start off with our first topic, which is challenges in working from home and homeschooling. When we're working from home, we need to understand that the atmosphere is not the same as what it would have been in the office. A disclaimer, if you hear my pressure cooker going off, please ignore it. Or if you see my children screaming out for something, please do accept that this is a working home while I am hosting this live session. Just as I have managed to give this disclaimer to you, do you think if you are in the midst of cooking and getting into a meeting, you could share with your colleagues some disclaimers of what could be going on in your house? It makes that pressure cooker going off a little less embarrassing and reduces the need for a sterile atmosphere, which is something we're used to in our offices. These are not our offices, these are our homes, and we are trying our best to make them work as office spaces. And the reality is, you're not the only one doing that. Everybody on that meeting call with you is in that same situation. What we also need to do is become much more effective at planning our day when we are working from home and homeschooling. Can we spend some time in the night before, the evening or the night before, to see what is it that's expected out of us the next day? What is it in terms of work, in terms of our children's education, in terms of the house tasks that we need to do? Take some time to organize that entire day and look at what timings you can create for yourself. Look at what timings you can create for yourself to be able to be effective for your family and your workplace. For example, one parent I know wakes up as a routine at 5 in the morning so that she gets a good 3 hours before the rest of the family is up to get a chunk of her planning work out of the way. She then proceeds to take a nap in the afternoon when her children are engaged by somebody else. So it's not like she's operating on less sleep. She has just structured herself enough to get the mental breaks that she needs to be able to work and engage with her children as well. Another parent I know is staying up till late at night to carry on her planning after her children have gone to sleep. Whichever strategy works for you, it's really okay as long as you recognize the need for additional planning that you need to be doing to be able to work from home while homeschooling. There is something that I would like to talk about homeschooling as a term. What we are doing right now is not homeschooling. It is what we educationalists like to call distant learning. Homeschooling is a choice that a parent makes to be able to look at their child's learning and follow it and look at their curiosity and create a curriculum of learning based on that. That is not what you are doing right now. What you are doing is distant learning where you are being given a curriculum, where you're being told how to teach it, and you're being told how the assessment is going to be done for the same. So let's not mix up these terms and create high expectations out of ourselves because a lot of parents are going on to various social media platforms and getting a lot of FOMO of looking at Pinterest images and Instagram images of people being able to produce some real masterpieces in what they call homeschooling. Having talked to parents around the world who are by choice homeschoolers, that is not what a homeschooling classroom looks like. And right now, in the stressful situation we're in, where this is not a choice, this has been thrust onto us, and there's a lot of planning and organizing and replanning and reorganizing and breaking of those plans and coming up with new plans going on. This is not the time to try to have those perfect images in place. So let's take it easy. Let's not put too much pressure on ourselves. Let's recognize that this is distant learning, not homeschooling, and put in that little extra time as we're working from home to organize our day. So, what does this organizing look like? Uh, that's an important thing that we need to understand. First things when children wake up, they do need a dose of connection. So don't wake them up to enter a Zoom classroom or start off with their tasks of the day. If you look at their typical school day, they wake up, get ready, and they're hurtled to school. But in that process of leaving the house and getting into their classroom, there are lots of light moments of interaction and play that they get the chance to partake in. Now in the house, those opportunities are lost. So, can we become those moments of interaction for them, of play? So, can you make sure that there is at least 15 minutes, if not longer, of play built in before they start off with their day of schooling? It's also important that while you are planning their work, while you are working and planning their school work, you build some overlaps of free time between the two of you. So maybe every 1 hour, half an hour if they're younger, and 2 hours if they're older, you check in with your children, where you just pop your face into whatever they're doing, look at them, take a 15-minute break, chit chat, something. Think about it like your water cooler breaks in the office, where you just ask a colleague, let's go have a coffee. Or your child would just pass a chit along to another friend and have a break in school. These breaks are very important for us to be able to step away from a very stressful work day or a school day. So when we're organizing these times, the things that I've asked you to look at is number one, plan for yourself the night before so that the next day you're not feeling like you're just being pushed into motion without knowing what needs to be done. The second thing I'm asking you to do is before your children start their school work, give them a break, play with them, make it a beautiful, engaging encounter so that they're able to de stress before entering the classroom. It shouldn't be from bed into classroom. The third thing I'm asking you to do is create regular breaks of check-in between you and your child. This is important for you as well as for your child to be able to function better and concentrate again on the task at hand. There's a lot of hellos going on in the comments, and while I'm reading all of them, I'd like to say hi to everybody, but I'm not going to take all the names because it will take away from the conversation you come tuned in to listen to. But thank you for joining us. There is a request for me to speak in Hindi, and I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to do both English and Hindi at the same time. Maybe at another day I can do a session which is only in Hindi, or we can do some translation for you. But I'll try to use some terms and phrases to get it mixed. The second topic that I would like to talk about today is how much screen time is too much screen time and how do we regulate this? There is a very funny meme going on all over social media that up till a month ago, parents were up in arms about that's too much screen time. And now parents are saying, here is the screen, get schooling. The reality of our time has really flipped. But according to the educationists around me and my own experience, we're not really looking at a difference in our stance on screen time. Even a few months ago, when I spoke about screens, I talked about screens from different perspectives of how we use them. So we like to look at the three C's: child, context, and content. Child being what is the age of the child, what are the needs of the child, and what is it that the child is using the screen for. Context being what is it that I am providing my child access to the screen for. Whenever screens have been used for interaction, so for example, you are right now on a screen listening to a parenting podcast with me, parenting live session with me. At the same time, you have the opportunity to be able to tune in, ask questions, and have an engaging conversation in this session. The context of this session is not one in which you are just watching, consuming without having any interaction. Your children who are logging into Zoom classes are interacting with their teachers. It is not a one-way communication. It is purely because of this reason that that screen is not a negative use of it. The problems we have always had with screens is when they become babysitting devices, where for hours in the name of educational programs, we do not interact with our children and expect the screen to take care of all those interaction needs. The screen can be treated like a book where the parent and child can cuddle in together and look at the screen and talk about what's going on. Frequently pause, engage with each other, and check in. Did you follow what's going on? Are you enjoying what's going on? Be it a video game, be it a movie, be it a Zoom classroom. So the context to screens that are harming and not good is when children are watching movies or YouTube videos or anything for hours to an end without any intervention. When you're using screens to interact with each other, to communicate with each other, then the context has changed completely and there is really no limit to how much you can use it for. So while you are in your own socially distant worlds, the only way we have to communicate with each other is those screens. And that is all your children have as well. So let's keep that in mind and make sure that the context of the screen is understood. The third C is the content. We need to make sure the content is appropriate and something that they're able to engage and understand with. We need to moderate we need to moderate the content our children are consuming because unfortunately there is a lot of objectionable content out there which your children might not understand the meaning of. If we're not going to moderate this content, we're going to throw our children into a world and a reality which they are not prepared for. Emotionally, and don't have the answers to understand what it could mean. So, to repeat, when we're looking at screens, we're looking at child content and context. The context being, is it to interact with somebody? Is it a mode of learning where there will be conversation followed up with it? And what will we do in terms of the content, in the context, why we need the screen and it can't replace it. We don't have a physical way to replace that conversation. I have an interesting question coming up, which is why I stumbled a little, which is what about the long term impact on health? Eyes, sitting position, Sanchita. That's a really good question. To be very honest, in the latest studies that I have come across, eyes do not get harmed by screens. That is a misnomer, that is a myth, and there is no scientific evidence linking overexposure to screens with eyes. A good thing to do is to keep taking breaks between regular screen use and using dimmers and reflectors to reduce the amount of strain of the light constantly coming on the eye, but it's not really as worrisome as we used to believe it. There is no science to collaborate that. In terms of posture, yes, that is a very important point that you have brought up. Children should have. So one thing that we should do in this space, I'm going to go on to this topic so that we can tie it in to this question. We need to create a living space to accommodate living and working and schooling from home. So my family, for one, we've cleared out all the furniture in our hall because earlier the hall was used to entertain, to have various people come in, and for different functions. Now we have created dedicated working spaces for all of us, including my children. Each of these dedicated spaces keep in mind the correct posture. So to be honest, the dining table chairs seem most comfortable and convenient. If your children are younger, then make sure you have the right footstool in place so their feet lay flat while they're able to sit with an erect back. Making sure that we are not lying on the bed, lying on the couch, and getting into slouching positions when we're doing homeschooling or working from home is very important to make sure that we don't get into bad postures and create more problems for ourselves with our back and our neck and our for children their posture to write and work. So yes, please do look at making sure that posture is taken into place. I'd just like to take a moment to see the questions that are coming in because they're rolling and they're good questions and I'd like to be able to address them. So Nitin, the question you have asked me is how do we make them understand that we are at home, but we are working from home and can't play with them all the time? So, if you remember, the first point that I brought in was about making sure that we're putting in enough breaks in our timetable and their timetable so that they are able to get that connection going with us. Just like I'm asking you to create a timetable for yourself, what if you were to make your children privy to that same timetable? That means they know when it is that they can come and play with you. What we see is when children know that, when they're expecting that, they become less demanding of the time when you're not available. Because they know that, okay, mom's in a meeting right now, dad's busy with work right now, but in exactly 15 minutes, he's going to come and play with me. A radical thing that has been suggested and works really well is to allow your little ones to peep in and say hello. Once they see the people on the screen, they very quickly lose interest. So I've been doing distant work for a very long time. I have clients all across the country and out of India as well. And so often when I'm in a session with the parent, the child is so curious about getting into the meeting. I have never had the child be interested or engaged to be a part of the meeting for more than 30 seconds. They like to say hello, they like to see what is going on because that is their natural curiosity, and then they move away. As long as they've had those sandwiches of connection between the times when you're busy. So just before I got onto this live, I made sure I spent enough time with my children, and I have promised to spend good time with them after so that they're really not interested in what I have to do. If it is a very important meeting, feel free to use the screen as a distraction for them. Because right now, let's not forget, your mental health is important. It is very important for you to feel comfortable and be able to function in the best way you can. Shashi, I'm sorry, I know you've asked for a Kannada language option, but I'm very sorry I don't have that option to be able to help you. I hope there's a translator around who can help you with this language. The next tip I'd like to talk about is handling cabin fever in us and our children. Literally every day, and if not multiple times in the day, I am seeing my moods changing. It's a continuous graph that goes up and down and up and down. I have a group of family and friends where every day we check in with each other and say, today looks good, today looks bad, today looks okay. And it seems to change. I had a client who messaged me earlier today and said, Megha, there's a strategy that's working really well for me. And I asked her, great, what is it? And she said, I am not thinking beyond 15 minutes. She has broken her day up into chunks of 15 minutes because that's how long her mental health is helping her out. We need to understand that this situation and this time is playing a lot of tricks on our mind. Our emotions are all over the place, and we need to take care of it. We cannot ignore it. While our emotions are all over the place, our children's emotions are not only all over the place, they are anchored to us. So the more connected we are, the more connected they feel. The more on top of it we are, the more on top of it they are, and so on and so forth. We're dealing with anxiety, we're dealing with stress, there's economic tensions going on, and there's the practical things of how do I survive right now? How do I get my vegetables? How do I get my food in the house? How do I make sure that my family is able to come out of this safe and sound? And if you have who are in at-risk locations, then that's an added stress. So make sure that you do take in time for your own mental health. Make sure that you are taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, so that you're able to take care of your children. Definitely joining into talks like this helps. I know DigiBank has got a great bouquet of services for you to take care of that mental health. But could you maybe every day put down some points in terms of today was good or today was bad? So start noticing a pattern in your mood swing. I'm not saying it's going to be a cyclical or a linear pattern, but there is going to be a difference in your mood day on day. As you start noticing you're different in your moods day on day, it is important for you to take that information and recognize that whatever you're feeling is going to change. It's not going to last. You're not going to be stuck in the same place indefinitely. This feeling of stuck is it is our unraveling most of the times. Start picking up on days that are going good, picking up on things. What was it that helped my day go well today? Was it the yoga or the meditation I did, or was it the yummy food that I ate? Or was it me taking an afternoon nap? And start trying to build that into your day. Similarly, do the same thing with your children. Start noticing, helping them as well. Notice their mood and notice what is it that helps. Maybe getting onto a call with their friends is helping them sometimes. Especially when those children are teenagers, things are much harder for them. Not only do they have raging hormones, they are in a psychological state where they're supposed to be traversing outside the comfort of the family. They're supposed to be exploring their identity and interacting with people who are outside the family. These times of claustrophobia are high for them. So give them much more room that you would have ordinarily in terms of respect or anger or any other such feelings that you might get. I had a parent call me in great stress yesterday because the father and the son seem to be getting on each other's case so much that they're getting into verbal spats. Mother is worried that it's going to move into physical spats as well. Can we use the element of humor to break these tensions. So give each other a lot of space, and instead of trying to hash things out or coming up with what you said, what she said, it's not worth it. It's not about what was said or what was done. It's purely about this feeling of claustrophobia that all of us are feeling inside the room. So instead of focusing on the why, let's break the situation, take a time out from each other, and re engage when things are feeling better. So, the way to get rid of cabin fever is to open the windows. If you have the opportunity to get some fresh air, to get down, to go into some greenery, great. If not, open those windows. That helps for sure. I have a couple of questions coming in, which let me try to address. So, how do we keep them engaged in educative activities for longer periods? Pooja, that's a question you've asked. And I would like to answer this question by questioning back, why is the engagement supposed to be educational activities always? So, actually, the next point that I'm going to cover is about what should learning look like in the house. And for this, I wanted to split up the idea of education into two parts: formal education and learning. Formal education is what your school tells you to do. So from preschool, school, university, etc. It's a formalized, structured way of learning where you have textbooks, you have learning, and there is a list in how you're supposed to go about doing it. Learning, on the other hand, happens spontaneously, happens all the time around us. From the age of 0 to 2, we see 75% of the brain having learned. The syntax and the connections in the brain are so high. There is no formal education happening over there, but the child is learning by just observing, feeling, touching, smelling, by engaging with their senses. Can we look at learning as being the star of this time instead of formal education? Because formal education is institutional, you do not have the institutional setup, backing, or training to be able to engage in it. None of the institutions have planned for it. None of the institutions know what to do with it. So even if they're flooding you with tasks, trust me, they're winging it. I've been talking to educationists around the world. The one thing that can be in your control and can be managed and done effectively is learning. So, what should learning look like in these quarantine times? I was recently talking to somebody, and their 16-year-old son is cooking at least one meal every day. That's learning. Get your children engaged in household chores, depending on their age, and independent activities. So, from the age of 2, we're looking at children being able to eat independently, dress themselves with increasing independence, cleaning up after themselves, engaging in household chores. From the act of sorting out the groceries and shopping that has been done for the house, to cleaning out the house, to sorting the clothes when they go in for a wash, come out of the wash, etc., etc. Let's use those as our learning opportunities and not formal education as our stress. So, when you ask me how do I engage my child in educational activity, depending on the age of your child, say your child is 2.5 years old, I promise you they'll be engaged in putting bindi into that packet. They will be engaged in cleaning the windows if you can, if they are at a comfortable height. So the moment we make the activity interesting, relevant for them, we find them much more interested and engaged in it. The thing with formal education is when you go to a school, you will see there is an artificial structure created to excite them, interest them, and get them engaged into it. So unless you have the capacity to set up boards all over the place, put up artworks, put up inquiries, etc., you're not going to be able to replicate that that formalized educational atmosphere. So why are we trying to get onto a boat that doesn't move on land? Let's change our mode of transport and let's look at it in terms of learning and focus on things that we can do right now, which is survival skills, which is living in the house, which is maybe taking care of each other's family members, checking in with the elders, talking to people, taking on the emotional and physical responsibilities depending on their age, that we all do. So I hope I've answered your question suitably. Moving on to the next one. High school children are extremely anxious since it has been thrown a lot of uncertainty into their academic plans going forward. This is from Sanchita, and I completely agree with you, which is why we're saying let's right now not focus on that formal education. I was talking to a client yesterday who has a child in a university abroad, and they're not expecting schooling to start back before January, schooling as they knew it. And even then, they know January seems like it's a guess, but nobody knows if it's going to start over there. In this time of uncertainty, we need to focus on now. There is no point in planning what about after quarantine. 2 days ago, I was talking to a parent whose child gave their ICSE examination, the 10th standard examination, and wasn't able to complete it. And I was asking that parent that how are your son and his classmates handling this situation? And her answer was, well, they've moved on. They don't know if they're going to have to give those extra papers. They don't know when they're going to have to give those extra papers. They are just acting as though they finished with that exam and what their next steps are. For those who have moved on to grade 11, they have started working on grade 11. For those who were planning for their entrance examinations for competitive exams, have started working towards that. So let's not work too much. Let's not focus too much of when things will open and what they're going to look like. Let's look at now and what are the tools that I have to focus on now. Let's not try to look at the quarantine in chunks of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on what announcement comes to us from the government. The reality is nobody knows. This is being done to keep all of us safe. The reality is there is still no vaccine out there. And there are countries which are opening up and closing down again. And the form of opening up is changing depending on the way the country is able to handle the pandemic or the way the pandemic has gripped them. So instead of trying to plan for this elusive future, which none of us have enough information on, let's use this energy for now. So if your teenage child is going through some anxiety about what about my future, listen to them. Give them a year. Listen to their anxiety, their feelings, and ask them, what do you think you could do right now? What is it that you would like to use this time for? Let's think about it as a time when they don't have to have academic pressure and work on science and technology and maths all the time. What if it's a time for them to enjoy their instrument or their painting or some other softer skill that they would have loved to explore but don't have the time to? So, as soon as our anxiety goes down about the future, our children are also able to stop thinking too much about it or reduce the amount they're thinking about it into the now and start focusing on what it is that they could do. So, at each point of time your child is experiencing anxiety, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is ask yourself, how are my anxiety levels looking today? What can I do to reduce these anxiety levels and make things better for myself? Because I promise you this, the moment you're able to get a grip on yourself, your child will find their way. You are the one who gives them that direction. So going on to the next question, Megha. Hi Megha. You have asked, I'm losing my patience with my child more often than normal circumstances for no fault of his. It leaves me with guilt. And how do I deal with my patience levels? This is exactly a segue into what I have talked about, which is we need to constantly look at what is going on inside us. So why is it that we lose patience with our children? Number one, we're expecting something which they are not able to deliver out of them. Number two, we're expecting something out of ourselves which we're not able to deliver. Number three, the expectations or the situation is too much for me to handle. So what can I do to reduce it? Start picking and choosing and saying no. So start saying no to activities that you're not going to be able to do. So if school has sent you 20 tasks to do with your child, and 3 out of those 20 tasks are really difficult and you don't have the bandwidth to do it, don't do it. Maybe tomorrow you'll have better energy to do it, maybe you won't. Maybe you can just write to your teacher and say, you know what, I'm trying, this is hard, I'll do it when I can. Schools are understanding and giving a wide room of berth to make sure parents aren't buckling down under this pressure. What we also need to do is recognize what is doable for our child and what is not. So, like I said, keep the academic pressure off, keep the learning pressure on, and you will see your child will be less trying and taxing for you and will want to engage in you. Make sure you're getting enough breaks for yourself. So there's something I've instituted in my house, and forms of it various clients of mine have instituted in their houses as well. So whether you have a room which you can break out into, or you have a couch you can break out into, maybe have a little plaque or a paper in which saying I'm resting or do not disturb, and stick it over there when you go into that little cave of your own. This is an important time for you to be able to recharge and feel and recenter yourself before you have multiple demands and questions coming your way. The sign of us losing it over our children and then feeling that guilt is because we weren't ready, we weren't prepared, we were overwhelmed. So, if we're going to focus on being less overwhelmed and being more prepared, we're going to have lesser chances of losing it with our child. And everybody knows that every parent who gets angry is never angry because it's their child's fault. It's always my patience that bore to him. And it's okay. Children are also understanding these situations. I'd like to talk a little bit about the emotional economy of the family over here. It's something that we have understood in studying behavioral sciences with families, where think about, the big fat Indian wedding and those bhangra circles where everybody makes a circle and everybody's standing around and dancing and clapping. And two people enter the circle. Whenever one or two people enter the circle, everybody closes in the gap a little more but encourages those two people. So if those people need more space, you open up the circle and dance wider. If they need less space, you come in close, but you clap, you encourage, you want them to feel like they have the audience and encourage them to do a better dance. Whenever they're done, they come and merge into that outer circle, and two more people or one more person comes in and takes their place. That is how emotions in a family work. Every time one person needs, and be it adult or children, needs that extra audience for the feelings that they are feeling, they enter that circle. And the others link their arms and hold around and give that person that space to be able to vent those feelings. So if there is an adult like me, for example, I have entered the circle, my children and husband will hold their hands and encourage me to have that space to vent so that I can come back out and give one of them space to come into that circle and have their release. A functional family is one where everyone is constantly taking turns to get in and out of this circle and center stage. The problems are when one person stays in the center stage for too long. So instead of feeling guilty for when you have entered the center stage, can we shift the thinking into, I managed to get out of there really quickly, or my family helped me get out of there, or my child was so supportive, or my spouse was so supportive of me being in that center stage. And the moment we start giving empathy to ourselves and to our family to play either role, whether it's in the center or in a supporting fashion, we start to see this beautiful dance, which is the emotional economy of the family. And there is no harm in it. So, be it adult or child, we need to make sure no one person is always in center and we're constantly moving in and out of the circle to make it enjoyable and pleasurable for everyone. The reality is, it is a learning ground. Again, I'm going back to the importance of learning. Having a parent in the center of the circle teaches the child the responsibility they have towards the mental health of their parent. Letting the child be in that center is the release that the child needs so that their thinking comes back on track and they're able to be functional and effective in the family. So I hope that helps in terms of the guilt that is experienced when children are. I don't know why this this is constantly going off in the volume. So I have a question here from Pooja where she's asking, how do we get toddlers to focus on the school activities that they tend to and not focus that they tend to not focus on since they are at home? I think I've already addressed this a couple of times before, Pooja. So if you don't mind later on listening back to that, you will get enough fodder for that question over there. I'm going to move forward into the next section that I plan to cover in our talk. And please feel free to keep asking me questions as we go on. Sorry, it's to be back on track. Yeah. So, I've already talked about the importance of thinking in the now and the importance of focusing on the situation as we have it right now instead of constantly planning about what is it going to be like when things open up and how, and to use this time really uh, I'm hearing language like make this time count and use this time, it's never going to come again. You don't want to look back and see that you did nothing, you made nothing useful out of this time. Here, I'd like to talk a little bit about what's going on in our brains when we're processing the situation we're in. This is not a holiday. I repeat, this is not a holiday. So, whatever that is going on in our houses right now is not the same as it would have been had we been on holiday. We are not experiencing carefree abandon. This is not a choice we have made. There has been no time for us to plan for the situation we've been put into. We have been literally thrown into the deep end and said, figure it out. What that means for my brain. So, the brain, think about the brain as having 5 layers. The topmost layer is about survival. So, newborn children are born with that topmost layer where their only focus is on survival. The fifth, which is the deepest most layer, is creative function. It is that feeling that you get when there is not a care in the world, there is no worry, and creative juices are able to flow, and you're able to think in tangents and able to come up with really out of the box ideas. Because that thinking requires that much brain power. The more lower we are able to go, it is a sign of the comfort we are feeling with our environment. Right now, based on the science that we're seeing right now, we're oscillating between layers 1, 2, and 3. In this oscillation of 1, 2, and 3, we are focused on really the hygiene factors, on survival, on food, on paychecks, on economy, on getting through this period. This is not the time when creativity can flourish. This is not the time where I can start cultivating a new hobby. And I'm talking as adults. I know I have talked about your teenagers and encouraging them to be able to create that, use this time away from the pressures of education, but it looks different for them. Children are not responsible for keeping the house functioning. Children's stresses are directly related to the parents' stresses. So, if you're able to keep your anxiety low, your child can access layer 5 fairly easily. You, on the other hand, cannot. So, if you're going to be able to not, if your brain is not going to be able to take going down to layer 5, how is it fair on you to put that pressure on yourself? So if I want to take away that pressure from going into layer 5, I'm going to focus on the situation as I have it right now and look at survival. I was having a very interesting conversation with somebody the other day where we were talking about wars and situations which are similar to this, where people have had to stay at home for safety. There have been soldiers who have been fighting. Right now, there are nurses and doctors who are fighting. Unfortunately for us, right now, there is this availability of stories of this fighting, which tends to put pressure on us that our story, whatever it is that we're experiencing has no value and needs to be suppressed. And these stories are where our empathies need to be. I'm not taking away the importance of empathizing and sympathizing with people who are fighting for the pandemic and the situation we're in. But I do want us to give ourselves that due and give ourselves that empathy that we are also fighting. We have not been built to sit on a couch and do nothing. We have been built to work, to actively take part in things which involve our own safety and security. Right now, we're not able to do that. And because of that inability, we are under stress. This stress is coming in the way of us accessing layers 4 and 5 of our brain, which simply takes away the ability to function in that manner. So I hope you understand that these times are not the same as before. And because they are not the same as before, the expectations out of us need to be more reasonable, need to be more measured of what it is that we can do for ourselves and our family. So, to sum up really everything that I have talked about, we've talked a lot about our children, we're talking a lot about our families. But at the center, and I hope you can see the peppering of it throughout this talk, but I want to close it with this conversation. At the center of the family, it is you. It is your mental health, it is your anxiety, it is your stress. So, you need to first look at what it is that you can do, what it is that is keeping your mental sanity at its best. What is it that you can do to flex that muscle and your own ability to increase your thinking and your free time and your processing and your ability to handle all the tasks your way. Once you have taken control of yourself, you will see your children start falling into place with much more ease and comfort. In the children falling into place, try to reduce the pressure from educational stresses into learning. Learning is more organic, it is more natural, and you already have all the tools you need for it in your house. Lastly, do not forget to ask for help. So I have a parent who every 2 o'clock, her mother gets on video conferencing with his parent's daughter to tell her stories. So every day at 2, this mom gets a break because grandmom and grandchild are engaged with each other. This is a win-win from all situations. So not only can you ask for help from people who are in the house, but ask for help from people who are not in the house to find that time to engage with your child. There is amazing technology available out there which can create that need for interaction between your child and other members of the family. And do not confuse that or worry about that taking away, becoming too much screen time, because that is the very important, essential interaction time. So I hope this talk has been of use. If you all have any other questions, I would love to address them. It has been deeply engaging and enjoyable for me to be here. And I'd really like to thank DigiBank for providing this opportunity, and not only providing this opportunity for recognizing that parents are under stress, that this is a topic that needs to be addressed, it needs to be worked on, and it should not be ignored. Thank you, DigiBank. Until next time, this is Megha Mawandia, your parent coach and counselor. Goodbye.